I've known Mike for, I don't even know how many years now. I remember he was a lobbyist for POPS, which was Parents Against Punitive Support, back in the 80s, when I was first a House member in, I think, 85. He was down here lobbying on some issues. Got to know him a little bit then, worked on some legislation with him then, and then of course I came to the Senate. And in 1995, he was in the House, and he was the lead on the Becca bill in the House, and I was chairing my first chair ever was, I don't even know what it was called, I think just Human Services at that time. I think Senator Quigley had the health side of the committee that Talmadge left, and I got the other side. And we worked on the Becca bill together, and it, of course, was the tragedy of Rebecca Hedman and her murder in Spokane. And the fact that the state had her in, well, not custody, but actually it had her in facilities a couple of times where she had just walked out of them and then ended up getting back in trouble, and her parents were running all over the state trying to catch up with her. And so it was a very significant time. I still consider this is my 29th year, that is the best thing that I've ever done, ever worked on, and it was with Mike Carrell. So that's kind of a fiber that ran between us for that entire time, was not only concern about at-risk kids and about having the state do things that are responsible to try to help at-risk kids and families, but then all sorts of different groups of individuals that are challenged in our state we worked on together also. When he came to the Senate, I think that he initially had a little bit of a reputation of being difficult. When he came to the Senate, a lot of people thought he wasn't going to be that easy to work with. But despite that reputation, he came onto my committee at the time, and he was very much not that way at all. We worked together on, like it was mentioned, there was the welfare reform. We worked together, and he worked with Senator Regala on offender reentry. And this was seemed a little bit of out of character for Senator Carrell to actually work on something that would help offenders get an opportunity to turn their life around when they got out by having housing and some programming, which he and I both realized would also lower their recidivism rates and make the public safer. But he could see through to that and actually help those people get their feet back under them. In fact, several times he came in the budget, and he was the ones that insisted on the housing vouchers in the budget for offenders that were getting out of prison, because he knew that they would be much more likely to reoffend if they weren't there. And then also he had a deep passion for protecting the workers at Western State and from the assaults that they had there, and he was constantly working on that issue and working with them to try to make them safer as they serve some people that are perhaps the most disadvantaged in our society. And this session, just this session, what was his main deal this session? It was a task force to start to look at the entire mental health system, which seems a little dysfunctional. And I took that a little personally. I thought I'd worked on that quite a bit myself, but I have to admit that it's still a little dysfunctional, our system. And so I was a little defensive at first, but he really wanted to see that work well. And he wanted to see it work well because there are people that are affected by that system that really don't have any control of their actions, and he wanted to make sure it worked well for them. And then also the reference to Mr. Science. I think this is something we would get on the floor every now and then, where he'd get up and with his science teacher background, he would be explaining some chemical reaction that we couldn't understand. But I have to remember just this session in Natural Resources, he came before the committee with a bill on some polluted lake in his district. And he gave us this long presentation about how the chemicals and the oxygen and the whatever, and we needed to do this, and it was classic Mike Carrell. It was just classic Mike Carrell to explain all of the details of the chemical reactions and why these certain actions needed to be taken. So I'm going to miss Mike Carrell a lot. I saw him as somebody that came here to be responsible and get things done. He was obviously a Republican. I'm not a Republican. I'm a Democrat. He was obviously conservative. I tend to be a little conservative on things, but maybe more liberal on other things. But he was somebody that came here to get things done. I know working with Senator Darnielle this session, he was very accommodating to get things done, not just to stick on a point, but to get things done. And we need more people like that in the legislature now and into the future, because the citizens of our state depend on us to come down here and work together to get things done. I'm going to miss Mike a lot for that. I'm going to miss him as a friend. I love talking to him about his triumphs. I always told him that my old Alfa Romeo could probably beat his Triumph. He wouldn't agree with me. So we had a lot of time as friends, as colleagues, but it's just a huge hole in this body, and it's a huge hole in our life. And this particular period of time in my life, I don't know, it's probably been the most stressful. I don't know if I'd call it memorable. It's going to be kind of a spot in my life that I'm never going to forget. And Mike Carrell is going to be somebody that when all the rest of your faces fade away, Mike Carroll's going to be somebody in this situation. He's going to be somebody that I'm going to remember, and I'm going to appreciate God giving me the strength to get through all of this. And Mike, I'm going to miss you, but I'm going to see you again someday.